The Caretaker. The job listing was too good to be true. Live-in caretaker needed for elderly woman, private room, meals included, $800 a week, light duties, nursing students preferred. I read it 3 times, certain I was missing something. $800 a week plus room and board for light duties? In this economy, that kind of money didn't exist. Not for a 23-year-old nursing student with no experience and a desperate need to get out of her current living situation. I applied anyway. The interview was conducted by a lawyer, not a family member, which should have been my first warning sign. He met me at a coffee shop downtown, asked me a handful of questions about my schedule, my studies, my background. Then he slid a contract across the table. Mrs. Hartwell is 91 years old, he said. She has moderate dementia and requires round-the-clock supervision. She's particular. The last 3 caretakers didn't last more than a month. What happened to them? They found the work unsuitable. His eyes didn't quite meet mine. Mrs. Hartwell can be difficult. She says things that don't make sense. She has episodes, but she's not dangerous, just confused. The family wants her to stay in her home as long as possible. Where's her family? Out of state. They prefer to manage things remotely. He tapped the contract. The pay is generous because the position is demanding. Full-time, live-in, minimal days off. But if you can handle it, the job is yours. I thought about my apartment, the mold in the bathroom, the roommate who'd stopped paying rent 3 months ago, the landlord's eviction notice taped to my door. I signed the contract. The house was old. Not charming old, not historic old, just old. A Victorian that had been beautiful once, probably, but had spent the last 50 years slowly surrendering to entropy. The paint was peeling, the porch sagged, and the windows were so clouded with grime they looked like cataracts. The inside was better. Clean, at least, if dated. Furniture from the 1970s, wallpaper from the 1960s. A smell of lavender and something underneath, something stale and closed up, like a room that hadn't been aired out in years. Mrs. Hartwell was waiting for me in the parlor. She was tiny, bird-boned, papery thin, white hair so thin I could see her scalp beneath. She sat in a wing-back chair by the window, wrapped in a shawl despite the warmth, watching me with eyes that were cloudy but somehow still sharp. "You're the new one," she said. "Yes, ma'am, I'm Claire." "Claire." She tested the name, rolling it around in her mouth. "That's a good name, a strong name. You'll need to be strong." "I'm sorry." "Nothing." She turned back to the window. "Your room is upstairs, second door on the left. Don't go in the basement." I waited for her to elaborate. She didn't. "Is there something wrong with the basement?" "Don't go in the basement," she repeated. "And don't open that door, not for any reason, not even if you hear them crying." A chill ran down my spine. Hear who crying? But Mrs. Hartwell had closed her eyes, drifting away to wherever her mind went when it left her. The conversation was over. The first week was easy. Mrs. Hartwell needed help with the basics: bathing, dressing, meals. Her mind came and went like a radio station fading in and out of range. Sometimes she was lucid, sharp, asking me about my classes and my plans and whether I had a young man in my life. Other times she was somewhere else entirely, carrying on conversations with people who weren't there, calling me by names I didn't recognize. "Sarah," she'd say. "Sarah, have you fed them today?" "I'm Claire, Mrs. Hartwell, not Sarah." "Claire." A flicker of recognition. "Yes, Claire. I'm sorry. I get confused." "It's okay. Who's Sarah?" "Sarah was... before." Her eyes went distant. "Before she left. Before I had to do it myself." "Do what yourself?" But she was gone again. lost in whatever fog her mind had wandered into. I learned not to push. The crying started on the 5th night. I was in bed, half asleep when I heard it, faint, muffled, coming from somewhere below me. A child's cry, high and thin, the kind of sound that burrows into your chest and refuses to let go. I sat up, listened. Silence. Then again, the crying, and something else. Voices, multiple voices, whispering words I couldn't make out. I got out of bed, opened my door. The hallway was dark, the only light coming from the bathroom nightlight at the far end. I crept toward the stairs, following the sound. It was coming from below, from the basement. I stopped at the basement door. It was old, solid wood, with a padlock that looked like it had been there for decades. Rusted, heavy, a keyhole clogged with grime. The crying was louder here, and the whispers, I could almost understand them now. Almost. Hungry, so hungry. Let us out. I reached for the padlock. No! I spun around. Mrs. Hartwell was standing at the end of the hallway, silhouetted against the bathroom light. She was trembling, her face twisted with fear. Don't touch that door. Her voice was stronger than I'd ever heard it. Don't ever touch that door. Mrs. Hartwell, there's someone down there. I heard. You heard nothing. She shuffled toward me, grabbed my arm with surprising strength. There's nothing down there, just old pipes, old house sounds. You were dreaming. I wasn't. You were dreaming. Her grip tightened, her eyes were wild, desperate. Promise me you won't open that door. Promise me, Claire. I looked at her face, at the terror there, at something else, something like guilt. I promise, I said. She relaxed, let go of my arm. The confusion was already creeping back into her eyes, the lucidity fading. Good girl, she murmured. Good girl. Someone has to keep them in. Someone always has to keep them in. She shuffled back to her room. I stood in the hallway, staring at the basement door, listening to silence. The crying had stopped. I started finding the books the following week. They were hidden throughout the house, tucked behind other books on shelves, shoved under furniture, stuffed in the back of closets. Old books, some of them, with cracked leather spines and pages that crumbled at the edges. Others were newer academic texts, library books with due dates from the 1970s that had never been returned. They all had one thing in common: fairies, changelings, the fair folk. I'd grown up on Disney movies, Tinkerbell, Pretty Little Things with Wings and Sparkles. These books described something else entirely, something old, something hungry, something that stole human children and left their own in the cradle instead. The changeling will appear sickly, strange, wrong in ways that are difficult to articulate. It may refuse to eat human food. It may not grow as a normal child grows. It may sing songs in languages no human has ever spoken. The changeling is not evil, merely other. It does not belong in the human world, and it knows this. It waits to be returned to its own kind, and while it waits, it hungers. I found drawings too, sketches in the margins of some books, more detailed illustrations in others. The changelings looked like children, almost, but their eyes were too large, their limbs were too long, their smiles showed too many teeth. I closed the books, put them back where I found them. That night, I heard the crying again. Mrs. Hartwell, why do you have all these books about fairies? She looked up from her oatmeal. It was one of her good mornings. Eyes clear, voice steady, present in a way she often wasn't. Where did you find those? All over the house, hidden. She was quiet for a long moment. Her spoon trembled in her hand. I ran a foster home, she said finally. A long time ago, before you were born, before your mother was born, probably. Children no one else wanted. Children the system had forgotten." "That's very kind." "It wasn't kind." Her voice was flat. "It was necessary. I needed to understand what I was dealing with." "What you were dealing with?" "Most of them were just children. Broken, damaged, but children. Human children." She set down her spoon. "But some of them weren't." I didn't say anything. Waited. I didn't believe it at first. The old stories. I thought they were just stories. But the signs were there. The ones who didn't eat, who didn't grow, who sang songs in languages I'd never heard, who looked at me with eyes that knew things no child should know. "Mrs. Hartwell, I tried to send them back." Her voice cracked. "The book said you could. Leave them in the forest, ring a bell, recite old words. But it didn't work. Nothing worked. They just kept coming back. And they were hungry, Claire. Always so hungry." She looked at me, and her eyes were clearer than I'd ever seen them. "So I put them in the basement, and I've kept them there ever since." I should have left. Any reasonable person would have left, called the lawyer, broken the contract, walked out the door, and never looked back. Mrs. Hartwell was clearly delusional. The dementia had latched on to old folk tales and twisted them into something she believed was real. But the crying was real. I heard it every night now, and the whispers, and sometimes when I pressed my ear to the basement door, I heard something else. Movement, shuffling, the scrape of something against stone. And I heard singing. Children's voices, high and sweet, singing nursery rhymes I recognized in a language I didn't. The melody was right, but the words were wrong. Syllables that slithered and curled, that left a taste of copper in my mouth even though I was just listening. I told myself it was recordings, old tapes maybe, playing on a loop, some strange ritual Mrs. Hartwell had set up years ago and forgotten about. I almost believed it. I found the photographs in the third week. They were in a shoebox in Mrs. Hartwell's closet, hidden behind a stack of old linens, black and white some of them, color others, but faded. The hues shifted toward yellow and orange. Children, dozens of children, spanning what looked like decades. They stood in front of the house, on the porch, in the parlor where Mrs. Hartwell still sat every day. Some of them smiled, some of them didn't. And some of them. I stared at a photograph from what must have been the 1960s. A group of children, 5 or 6 of them, arranged in 2 rows like a class picture. Most of them looked normal, sad maybe, tired, the kind of children you'd expect to see in a foster home. But 2 of them were wrong. I couldn't say how exactly. Their features were normal, eyes, nose, mouth, all in the right places. But something about the proportions was off. The eyes too wide set, the fingers too long, the smiles that curved upward just a little too far. And they were looking at the camera, really looking in a way the other children weren't, like they knew they were being photographed, like they knew someday someone would be looking back. I dropped the photograph. When I picked it up again, the children looked normal. Just children, just a trick of the light, of the faded colors, of my imagination working overtime. I put the box back where I found it. That night, Mrs. Hartwell had an episode. "You have to feed them." She grabbed my arm in the darkness, her grip like iron, her eyes wild and white-rimmed. "Mrs. Hartwell, it's 3 a.m. Promise me you'll feed them when I'm gone. Promise me." "Feed who?" "The children." Tears were streaming down her face. "They're so hungry. They've been hungry for so long. I tried to send them back, but they won't go. They just wait, and someone has to feed them." "There are no children." "Promise me." Her scream echoed through the house, and from below, from the basement, I heard an answering sound. Not a cry this time, something else, something eager. "I promise," I whispered. "I promise, Mrs. Hartwell, I'll feed them." She relaxed. The grip on my arm loosened. The wild light in her eyes faded. "Good girl," she murmured. "Good girl. You're a good girl, Claire. Better than Sarah. Better than all of them." She let me guide her back to bed. By the time her head touched the pillow, she was asleep. I stood in her doorway for a long time, listening to her breathe, listening to the sounds from the basement. Mrs. Hartwell died on a Tuesday. I found her in the morning, still in her bed, her face peaceful in a way it never was when she was awake. The doctor said it was her heart. Just gave out the way old hearts do. Natural causes, nothing suspicious. The lawyer came that afternoon, told me I could stay until the estate was settled if I wanted, told me the family would be in touch about next steps. He didn't ask about the basement. I don't think he knew. That night, I sat in the parlor in Mrs. Hartwell's chair, watching the shadows lengthen across the floor. The house was quiet, quieter than it had ever been. No rambling monologues, no episodes, no one calling me by the wrong name. Just silence. And then, from the basement, the crying started again. Louder this time, more insistent. And underneath it, the singing, those nursery rhymes in that wrong language, the melody sweet and the words like broken glass. "Hungry, so hungry. She's gone. Who will feed us now?" I walked to the basement door. The padlock was rusted, old, but Mrs. Hartwell had given me the key the week before, pressed it into my hand during one of her lucid moments, made me promise to keep it safe. "Only if they get out," she'd said. "Only if there's no other choice. You might have to go down there. You might have to—" She hadn't finished the sentence. I put the key in the lock. The stairs were stone, worn smooth by decades of footsteps. The air grew colder as I descended, not basement cold, something deeper, something that had nothing to do with temperature. It was the cold of old places, forgotten places, places that had been sealed away from the world for a very long time. The crying was all around me now, the singing too, and something else, breathing, many small breaths, in and out, perfectly synchronized. I reached the bottom of the stairs. The basement was larger than it should have been, larger than the house above, stretching back into darkness my flashlight couldn't penetrate. The floor was packed earth, the walls rough stone, and along those walls, cages, dozens of them. Old iron cages, the kind you might use for livestock, arranged in rows that disappeared into the black. And in those cages, children. They pressed against the bars, their pale faces catching the flashlight beam, their two large eyes reflecting it back like animals in the dark. They looked like children, almost. The proportions were wrong. The smiles were wrong. Everything about them was just slightly, terribly wrong. And they were looking at me, all of them, dozens of them, looking at me with hunger in their ancient eyes. "Hello," one of them said, a girl, maybe 8 years old, maybe 80. Her voice was sweet, musical. It made my skin crawl. "Are you the new mother?" "I'm not. She said someone would come." The girl tilted her head, too far, at an angle that should have been impossible. "She said someone would take care of us, feed us, love us." "I don't. We're so hungry." Another voice from another cage, a boy this time, his fingers wrapped around the bars, his nails too long and too sharp. "We've been hungry for so long." They started moving, all of them, reaching through the bars, pressing against the iron, their whispers filling the basement like the rustle of dead leaves. "Feed us, love us, stay with us, forever." I turned to run. The door at the top of the stairs slammed shut. I heard the lock click into place. I don't know how long I screamed, how long I pounded on the door, how long I begged for someone, anyone, to let me out. No one came. No one was coming. And behind me, in the darkness, the children waited. They don't hurt me. I want to make that clear. They could. I see what's under those child faces sometimes. When the light catches them wrong, I see the teeth, the hunger, what they're capable of. But they don't hurt me. They need me. I understand that now, the way Mrs. Hartwell understood it, and Sarah before her, and whoever came before Sarah. Someone has to take care of them. Someone has to feed them. Someone has to keep them contained, keep them from getting out into the world, keep them from... I don't think about what would happen if they got out. I just do my job. The lawyer sends groceries every week, leaves them on the porch. I go up at night when it's dark and bring them down. I don't know what he thinks is happening in here. I don't think he wants to know. The children sing to me sometimes. Their songs are beautiful in a way that makes my chest ache and my eyes water. They tell me stories about where they're from. A place with no sun, no time, no death. A place they can never go back to. They call me Mother now. I don't correct them anymore. I used to think about escape. In those first weeks, I tried everything, screaming until my voice gave out, pounding on the door until my fists bled, searching for another way up, another door, another window. There's nothing, just the stairs and the door at the top, and the lock that only opens from the outside. On the third day, I heard footsteps above me, the lawyer's voice muffled through the wood. "Miss, are you down there?" I screamed for help, begged him to open the door. There was a long silence, then the sound of paper sliding under the gap at the bottom. A letter. I read it by flashlight, my hands shaking. "The house is yours. All expenses paid. A monthly stipend will be deposited into an account in your name. Groceries will be delivered to the porch every Monday. The family thanks you for your service to the Hartwell legacy." No mention of what was in the basement. No acknowledgement of the children, the cages, the things I'd inherited. Just, "Thank you for your service." The lock clicked open. I heard his footsteps retreating across the floor above, the front door opening and closing. He never came back. I could have left, I know that. The door was unlocked. I could have walked up those stairs, out of that house, and never looked back. But I stood at the bottom of the stairs, and I listened to the children crying behind me, and I thought about what would happen if no one fed them, if no one kept them contained, if they got hungry enough to find their own way out. And I stayed. This is my life now. These stone walls, these iron cages, these children who aren't children, who call me mother, who sing me songs from a place with no sun. Mrs. Hartwell did this for decades, Sarah before her, others before that. Now it's my turn. I don't know how long I'll last. I don't know what happens when I'm gone, if the lawyer will find someone new, if the door will simply stay locked forever, if the children will finally find a way out. I try not to think about it. I just do my job. I feed them. I care for them. I keep them in. And somewhere in the dark, they sing.